Welcome to the Atlanta Men's Workshop speaker and workshop recordings. Atlanta Men's Workshop is held every spring and fall at the Rock Eagle 4-H campus in Eatonton, Georgia. That's just about an hour east of Atlanta, Georgia. Please visit our website at atlantamensworkshop.com or see the link below to find dates and details to join us. Partial scholarships are available to those in need. We hope you enjoy this presentation, and we hope you will come join us at the Rock. Until then, we shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then.
Name's Chuck Hartley. I'm alcoholic. Got a home group, Busters for Sobriety. You heard Chip talk about it last night. I got the same group. I'm just doing this because y'all can't. Been sober by the grace of God, Actions of Alcoholics Anonymous, and very patient sponsorship since December 16th of 1988. I'm very grateful for that. My family's ecstatic. And Chip talked about last night, relapse is not a requirement. There's sobriety. That sobriety date I have, 13,103 days ago, nobody's counting but me. 13,103 days ago, that's my first sobriety date. That's my first contact with you people, and it's still the same one today. So relapse is not a requirement. There are a number of new people here. I would not have known that if they hadn't had the courage to come up here and get a chip. And all I can say, guys, is there's good news and there's bad news about Alcoholics Anonymous. The bad news is we're going to talk about God. And the good news is we're going to talk about God. Jewel came up yesterday and said, we're purveyors, I think he said, which he broke down to something I could understand, which was we're talkers. And that's what they did when they asked me and Chip to come down here. They asked a couple of long-winded talkers to come down and share their experience with this deal here. Our book even talks about, in the stories in the back, it tells how each person developed a relationship with God. And if you have a 4th edition big book, I'm in it. I don't usually say that, but I'm here with a bunch of men, so I'm going to say it. On page 512, there's a story called Empty on the Inside. And the very last page, the author talks about, and I found a man in AA that did AA just like me. That's me. I'm in the big book. Because that story is my wife's. And we have been happily married since July the 11th of 1992. So 2 sober drunks having a sober marriage. It's been an amazing, amazing trip. I got 2 family trees. My father's family tree is very long, lots of branches, very accomplished people. None of them drank, not a one of them drank. My father was a heavy drinker in his family. And on my parents' wedding anniversary, he would have a glass of wine. Most of the time, he didn't finish it. And on a real hot day in the summer, after he cut the lawn, he would grab me up and take me to the bar, and he would have 1 beer, which he would drink very fast. And he would say, come on, boy, we're going home. That was a heavy drinker in his family. The rest of them are like, his whole family, they're really nice people, but they're boring as hell. You know? It's like, 1 high school, 1 college, 1 career, 1 wife. What the? I just don't understand. I had an aunt, my dad's younger sister. She just passed away not too long ago, and she was 93 years old. And So I guess it's been 2 years. And I remember calling her when I turned 30 years sober. I wanted to brag to that side of the family. So I called my Aunt Mary. Guess what, Aunt Mary? I haven't had a drink in 30 years. And you know how when you tell people that don't understand us something, that quiet that you get, that's what I got. I got just kind of silence for a few moments. And she said, well, that's wonderful, Chuck. That's really good. So, honey, I have not had a drink in 90 years. My mother's family tree is a bush because they cut that tree down to set a fire to stay warm. My mother is the youngest of 10 children, and she was born in 1926, so I have a whole bunch of old relatives. And my mom's the youngest of 10, and my mother had 5 boys, and that's the least amount of kids that those 10 kids had. So my cousin's probably more than people that's in this room, and which was good. I needed a big family because I turned out later to be a thief, but not a good one. So I stole from family. And so I got this huge family, and everybody in that family likes to drink. If they're not alcoholics, they're heavy drinkers. They just love this stuff, man. They were my people. I understood every single one of them. Shoot, my favorite uncle drove a Stroh's beer truck, and he would come pick me up. He was a Navy SEAL before they had Navy SEALs. He was an underwater demolition guy in World War II. And he was an interesting cat, man. He got captured by Mussolini's troops and put in a POW camp. While they were there, he said something stupid, which I believe because I drank with him. And they shot him in the face with shrapnel. So his whole face was nothing but hamburger. And spent some time in a hospital in California when they let him loose in his back pay. Bought himself an Indian motorcycle and drove it all the way back to Ohio. And he was my favorite, man, because he would come. I'd be 14, 15 years old, and he'd pull that Stroh's beer truck right in front of the house, beep the horn, pull the horn. Come on, boy, I need you to go on a run with me. And I'd go on a run with him. He didn't care if I drank beer all week. And he was an interesting guy. So I got those 2 warring families in my head. And I was a goofy kid. I really was. I was a goofy kid. Only 1 or 2 people have ever said this after I told it from the podium. I got suspended from kindergarten. Apparently, I had got carried away, and they didn't appreciate it. And when my kids did that, they just gave them Ritalin. We didn't have Ritalin when I was in kindergarten. Boy, we had paddling. That'll straighten your ass right up. I about OD'd on paddling. And, just needed a sponsor. Yeah. Some 3rd grader I could have called up. Oh, for God's sakes, Chuck, eat the cookie, drink the milk, and take the nap. I've been all right. So, with that auspicious start, I white-knuckled it until I was 12. And when I was 12 years old, I needed a drink, and I knew where to get one. See, my father was a personnel director at a big factory in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I grew up. And one of the things this company did, if you did a good job, and they'd give you a bottle of liquor. And I already explained to you about my father's side of the family, bunch of boring, straight, go to work every day kind of people. So my dad did a good job every year. And so we had a basement full of liquor, and he would hide it. He actually chiseled out a big area of stone down in our basement so that he could hide that liquor. Because my mother's brothers and sisters would come over and drink it all if he didn't hide it. And he thought it was hidden, but I knew where it was. I didn't know anything about drinking other than my relatives seemed to enjoy it. So I went in and got the nicest, prettiest bottle that I could find. It was real pretty, cut glass, clear liquor, and got a couple of friends. I'll tell you what this stuff was too, because sometimes I forget. That real pretty bottle was Seagram's Extra Dry Gin. That's the nastiest stuff I've ever put in my mouth, man. I spent a lot of time in the Hamilton County workhouse, and they used to strain sterno through bread, and that shit tasted better than Seagram's Extra Dry Gin. I tell you what, I swore I'd never drink another drop of Seagram's Extra Dry Gin, and I have not to this day. I have drank everything else under the sun, but I have not drank that stuff. It was nasty. But I didn't know it was nasty. I got a couple of friends. We went out in the woods. I took a big drink. They each took a big drink, came back to me. It was about half full. And I thought, if I pass this around again, these Bogarts are going to finish the bottle. So I did. And what happened to me a lot when I drank. The liquor went all the way down to my feet, and I started getting warm. And my legs got warm. And my belly got warm. Then I started to grow. I was a little bitty kid. It took a while to get this big. And this is about a third of the guy that came to you. But I started growing. I was from a little pimply-faced 12-year-old, and all of a sudden I was 6'2", 245-pound linebacker. My mouth was, anyway. And I started having a good time with my friends, and they'd carry on. I was carrying on. All of a sudden, I started carrying on talking about their mamas. They beat the hell out of me. Drug me to the house, put me on the front porch, rang the doorbell, ran off into the night like two cowards that they were. My parents came down, found their oldest son, in a drunken stupor, and my parents did not know anything about Al-Anon, but this was the only Al-Anon thing they ever did, because the rest of the time they just loved me and almost loved me to death. And but that night they just drugged me into the living room and went back to bed, left me lay there. Sometime during the night, one of my four brothers snuck downstairs and threw up on me. That was 56 years ago, and I have yet to get one of them rascals to admit they did it. And I couldn't wait to do it again. I could not wait. I woke up in a pool of my own vomit, beaten half to death by my best friends, and I could not wait to do that again. And I did. I did it again and again and again and again and again. And it was 1968 when I started drinking. I don't know what you guys were doing in 1968, but I was trying not to go to school. I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1968. There was a lot of race riots going on, and I was supposed to go to this big high school, about 5,000 students. It was about 80% black, and when I wasn't drinking, I was a 5'2", 90-pound, pimply-faced white boy. I was not going to that school. So I didn't. And the school was busy containing the riots. They had armed National Guardsmen walking our halls. And I just didn't go. And they didn't know I wasn't there. They couldn't track you like they do nowadays. I mean, nowadays, everybody's got a computer chip in their butt. But, they couldn't track you then. They didn't know. I mean, classes were 100 people plus. They didn't know if I was there, if I wasn't there. And, the guys that didn't do anything acting out in class, they got D's and F's or whatever. And the guys that were star students, they got A's and B's and stuff. And guys like me, they just never knew whether I was there or wasn't there, or took the test or didn't take the test. I was a C student, and I was a rising junior before I got arrested. And they found out I hadn't been going to school for a while. And you only hear this in Alcoholics Anonymous. I got arrested for my first felony. They did not take kindly to disarming the police officers where I grew up. Who knew? And so I was done with school. And I was done with school then. School was done with me, and it took every bit of pull my dad had to keep me out of prison. And I turned 18 years old soon after that, and I got a little nudge from the judge, and I enlisted in the United States Army. I had tried to enlist for almost 2 years before that in the Navy, but they weren't taking guys that were peeing as hot as I was. And so they wouldn't take me. And all of a sudden the judge just said, they'll take anybody in the Army, boy, go on over there. And they sure did. And they signed me up, sent me away, told me they were going to send me to a school to learn how to do computers, this new thing they were trying out. And just like Chip said, basic training, we got our orders, and I thought I was going to go to Fort Ord, California, and loll in the sunshine and learn something about computers. And I got this card that said I was going to go to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and learn how to be a cook. And I went to the drill sergeant. I said, what's wrong? They told me I was going to go computer school. Now I got to go to cook school. And he said, well, dumbass, I'm guessing that no computer operators died in Vietnam this week. Shut up. It's a lot like a sponsor, drill sergeants. And so I went to be a cook. That was a long time ago. I still can't cook. They sent me to Germany. By then, I was a decent-sized guy. They sent me to be a cook for an MP company, and the MP company already had a cook, but they were short a couple of MPs, so I got to do that the rest of my tour. On-the-job training, I got OJT as an MP. I was a little bit better at that than I was. Oh, no, I wasn't. All I did was ride around and rouse dependents of their weed. Their hash. And I got invited not to come back to the United States Army. And I went home with an honorable discharge. My father put me to work in his factory. And I made a whole bunch of money working there. In 1977, I was making $12 an hour. And I don't know about you guys, but I always seem to do worse when things went well. You know? So I got all this money, so I buy a car. I'm driving around. Still got money, so I get a nice place to stay. So I'm going over there. Now I don't have to drink that Rock Gut Seagram's Extra Dry Gin. I can drink top shelf liquor, so I'm doing that. Supplementing all of that with alcoholic additives, or outside issues, if you will. And I start getting arrested, charged with DUI. I looked at my sheet not long after I got sober, well, about a year and a half, and everything on it said, while intoxicated. Every charge said, while intoxicated. And so I kept getting arrested. Then I'd lose that good job because I had to go to jail for a while. But Dad was the personnel director, so I get out of jail, get the job back, get another car, get another place to live, get another bottle of top shelf liquor, get arrested for DUI or something else. So I figured Cincinnati was my problem. And you don't hear too much about geographical changes, but that's what they called it when I was new. The geographical changes. I went to California 3 different times making Cincinnati my problem. I went 3 different times. I went 3 different ways. I took 3 different hostages with me each time I went. And every time we got out to California, there I was. And my father was not the personnel director of anything in California. And so me and my 7th grade education was not getting really good jobs. So I would come home and he'd put me to work. And I'd get a little car. I'd get a little apartment, drink top shelf liquor, buy some alcoholic additives, get arrested again. So it went on for a long time. My mother came to me in 1980, I don't know, sometime in the early 80s, and said, your father had to retire. You know that. My father had 3 open heart surgeries, and they cracked his chest all 3 times. They did 15 bypasses on that man, Chip. And my father was as big a man as I am now. When he died, he weighed 120 pounds. That stuff just killed him. It's slow. Anyway, my mother said, we're going to retire. And your father always wanted to retire to Florida, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to retire to Florida. And she said, I want you to do me a favor. I said, sure, Ma, anything. What do you need? She said, please, honey, don't ever come to Florida. I assured her that I wouldn't. And off she went, and off my father went. And Joy, whatever was left of their wonderful marriage. And they weren't gone too long, and I was driving around one day and went into a blackout. And when I came out of the blackout, I was surrounded by cops. And this was unusual. I mean, there were a lot of cops. There was 8, 10 cops there. And I was getting tickets for everything. I mean, first I got a DUI. That was number 9. And I ain't that many. Drank every day and drove too. So that was DUI number 9. So there's a ticket. You got 8 other DUIs. You do not have a driver's license. There's another ticket. You got 8 other DUIs and no driver's license. You can bet you're on probation or parole someday gone where. There's another ticket. They hit me with all kinds of tickets. I hit them with my mouth. I was a mouthy drunk. And people would tend to address the problem at the source. That's why I ain't got no teeth. But these are gifts of sobriety. These are store-bought teeth. These are better than the ones God gave me. You can chew down a tree with those implants. But I wasn't sober yet, so I had no teeth. And they hit me in the mouth and I'm bleeding. One of them wrote me a ticket for littering. And they took me to jail. And while I was in jail, and when you get arrested on a charge, at least in Hamilton County, Ohio, when you get arrested on a charge you're already on probation for, you ain't getting no bail. You're just going to sit there till you see the judge. And somebody made a mistake and put me on the bond board for $100. Man, you never saw a guy run for the phone as fast as I did. I ran for the phone. I called my youngest brother because my parents tried their best to keep us all out of prison. But they ran out of money when it came John's turn, so he got the short end of the stick. And they knew it. They tried to make it right. I said, I don't care what you got to tell Mom and Dad. You call them up and get $100 and come get me out of here. And he did, and they sent him $200, and he bailed me out, and he handed me the other $100, and he said, I'll see you. I said, wait a minute, where are you going? He said, I'm going home. I said, yeah, I'm going with you. Got to put a plan together. No, you guys always had to have a plan, plan B, plan C. If this happens and I do that, and if she does that, and I always had a plan. So I need to go to your house and get a plan. He said, you can't come to my house. Why not? He said, my wife hates you. Okay, that's fair. I don't like your wife. Take me to Bill's house. My other brother, 2 of my brothers passed away very young, so the rest of this talk will be about my 2 other brothers. And so I said, take me to Bill's house. And he said, I was talking to Bill before I came down here, and Bill said you can't go to his house neither. I said, why not? Bill said him and his wife hate you. Y'all, I have burned every single bridge. Every bridge. I mean, my family is so big. We had a family reunion. We had to rent an amusement park. That's how big it was. If you count up all my cousins, first, second, third, however you done to do it, I got over 1,000 cousins. Most of them are older than me. I mean, my mom has a nephew and a niece older than her. Because her oldest brother was 21 years older than her. And I couldn't go to none of their houses. I wasn't welcome in any of their houses. See, I told y'all I was a thief, but a bad thief, so I'd steal from them. Because I knew, like my favorite cousin Skip, I knew if I stole from Skip and he caught me, he'd just beat me up and throw me out in his yard and tell me to get and don't come back. And I'd be like, okay, big deal, Skip, 999 more cousins. And it went like that. And I couldn't go to any of them, none. So I did my best thinking when I was drinking. So I bought a bottle and started thinking. And then I went and bought a bus ticket to Florida. They took me in and cleaned me up again. And I won't go into all the details. My father was dying of heart disease and I was dying of alcoholism. We weren't sure which one of us was going to go first. It was him, 1986. We brought him back to Cincinnati to bury him. And my mother expected her oldest child, me, to help her bury her lover of 35 years. And y'all, I could not lift a finger to help that woman. Best I could do was get to the bar across the street from the funeral home. I'm in there drinking. And my best friend, one of those guys that went out in the woods with me when we were 12, came over. And turned out he was sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. And he come over to do a 12-step. And it was a great 12-step. It really was. I mean, he talked for over an hour about his drinking and what alcoholism took him to and what Alcoholics Anonymous brought him up from. It was a great 12-step. And when he got done, I said, well, that's awesome, Greg. If I get that bad, I'll give you a call. 2 years later, 2 years of complete homelessness, no job, unemployable, thief. And from that time, by this time, I weighed 307 pounds. And I just stole everything I wanted. I'd go into one of those little cash and carry places. And I'd get a couple of cases of beer and tell them to put a few packs of cigarettes on there. And they'd go to ring it up, and I'd just start to walk out. And one time, the cashier said, hey, you need to come back and pay for that. I just looked at her and I said, look here. I need this stuff, and I'm going to leave with it. And you can call the police. This is a misdemeanor. I'll do 90 days. While I'm there, I'm going to get healthy again. And when I get out, I'm going to come pay you a visit. That's the kind of man that alcohol turned me into. So I'm homeless. I'm in a shack. There was some kind of hobo shack on the Little Miami River. And it was 4 walls and tar paper roof and a dirt floor and a hole in the back of the place where you could go to the bathroom. And that was it. And one day I came to, had a little bit of money, don't know how I got it, but I had some. And I thought, I'm tired of this. I'm just tired. There's a knife and gun club pretty close to here. A bunch of bikers go in there and they shoot each other on the regular. I'm going to go in there and buy a big stein of beer and smack the biggest dude in there right in the face with that stein of beer. He'll shoot me and put me out of my misery. That's too big of a coward to do it myself, so I was going to get some biker-assisted suicide. And I went to do that. But the only problem with being in Ohio in December is 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. look exactly the same. It's just gray. And I would have swore it was 6 p.m., but it was not. It was 6 a.m. Bar was not open. There were no bikers there to help me commit suicide. So I sat on the stoop and just berated myself. What kind of a loser? Man, you can't even tell time well enough to get somebody to shoot you. What a loser. And while I was there, the thought that I now know was placed there by God, I wonder if Greg's still sober. And Greg had had the same phone number forever, so I went over and I called him. I said, you still not drinking? He said, yep. I said, can you come get me? He said, hold on. Because by this time he had a good job. And he had to ask his wife if it was all right if he called off of work to come get his friend. And she must have said okay, because he said, where are you? And I told him. He went, oh, crap. He said, this was not a nice neighborhood. And he did not want to go there at 6 a.m. But he did. He came down there. And he got out of the car. And Greg and I Greg just passed away of this disease just a couple of months ago. But he got out of the car and he saw his best friend. We'd been friends since we were 10 years old. We went to the same church together. And he started to cry. And he said, come on, get in the car. And I didn't have the strength to get up off the stoop of the bar. I couldn't get up. So, well, I'm grateful. Greg was a 6'2", 245-pound linebacker. So he came over and picked me up and put me in his car. If he'd have been a little pimply-faced, scrawny guy like I was when we started drinking, you'd have a different speaker. Actually, if he'd have had a Volkswagen, you'd have a different speaker. But he had a great big old 1973 LTD. That thing was huge, man. Even the trunk was huge. You could have sublet that trunk to a family of 4. It was huge. So he put me in his car and he drove me to his house. When we got up to his house, he come around, opened up the door, he picked me up, took me inside and laid me down on his couch. Chuck Chamberlain said it best. He laid me down on his couch and AA rocked me to sleep. I detoxed on his couch. I detoxed hard on his couch. When I got done, they had to throw the couch away, buy a new couch. His wife heard that sugar was good for drunks that were detoxing like me, so she set about cooking cookies, cakes, pies. Went to the store, got ice cream, give me orange juice with carob syrup, make me frosted flakes with extra sugar. She was shoving that stuff in my mouth left and right. It must have helped because I'm alive. But I swear, a couple of years later, I got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and I called her up. I said, Edie, this is all your fault. She's sugar combing my butt. And by this time, I told you I weighed 307 pounds, but it was worse than that. I didn't have any teeth. I had a beard down the middle of my front. I had hair down the middle of my back. I couldn't have told you the last time I'd had a shower, brushed my tooth. And I was that guy. And I could not read. I couldn't read. I'd lost that ability. You drink enough whiskey and do enough outside issues and don't do anything about it, you'll lose it too. But it was December. Greg's kids were on Christmas break, and they thought it was really cool that their daddy had a friend who couldn't read. So they read to me. They read to me out of the big book, just like Greg told you. They read to me out of the big book, and they'd joke around with me, and I'd curse at them with the language of the streets. And one day, the oldest one, Amy, just stopped and looked at me, and she said, Chuck, We don't know most of what you're saying, but we know you're cursing at us. And if you don't stop, we're going to tell our dad and he'll beat you up. I was still living at their house, so I quit cursing. We learned how to read and how to talk without cursing all at once by a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old girl. This disease is rapacious. My buddy Greg's dead, and his youngest daughter's dead. Both of this disease, both this year. Greg started taking me to meetings. I did not care for the ones he took me to, because he took me to beginners meetings. Beginners, you don't know anything. I didn't mind that. I knew I didn't know anything. But every single one of them was down in the basement of the church. Now, you churchgoers are going to know where I'm going with this, and you non-churchgoers just get ready to laugh. See, down in the basement of most churches is where they have Sunday school for kindergartners, little kids. And they got little kid furniture down there. And I'm trying to wedge my 307-pound butt into a chair made for a 5-year-old. It did not work well. I broke a few chairs. And I vowed if I ever got a chance, I was going to get up out of that basement and never go back. Didn't take long, a couple of days. Sponsors, do not lose sight of your newcomers. Because this is what happened. Greg lost sight of me. And that meeting with the beginners meetings had 3 other meetings. Had the 3 total meetings. Had the beginners meeting in the basement and a discussion meeting on one floor and then a speaker meeting on another. And the discussion meeting was on the top floor, so I figured that was my best chance where Greg wouldn't find me. So I snuck up in there, got nice and comfortable in an adult-sized chair, and they started the meeting. I don't know what the topic was, but it got around to me, and I shared my experience, strength, and hope, all 3 days of it. Some old-timer stood up and pointed at me. He said, "Boy, you need to shut up and sit down." And I was one of those guys, and I said, "Old man, you need to go out the window." And I went to do just that. I was going to toss his butt out of the second floor of that big church. I didn't care. Out you go. What happened? You guys gang tackled me. Every single one of you guys is laying on top. Man, I was thrashing. I was cussing. The old timer was laughing. I would have bit one of y'all, but I didn't have teeth yet. My introduction to Alcoholics Anonymous. But I heard something there that day that made me never want to give up my seat. The old timer, the guy I threatened to throw out the window. He told me, keep coming back. And as I'm sure many of y'all have heard before, a lot of places will say, don't you ever come back here. For worse than that. Yeah. And this guy's like, keep coming back. So I did. And Greg started taking me through the steps. I was kind of hard-headed. He trying to explain the first half of the first step. He said, "Chuck, when you start drinking, when you have a drink, can you stop?" I said, "Sometimes." He said, "If you have 2 drinks, can you stop?" I said, "Sometimes." And I could see he was getting frustrated with me. And I said, "Greg, if I take 3 drinks, I cannot tell you what state I'm going to wake up in." He said, "Good. That's powerless over alcohol. Now, let's talk about your unmanageable life. And before you start giving me those maybe sometimes answers, you're living on my couch. Your life is unmanageable." Then he said, "You better hope there's a power greater than you that'll restore you to sanity, because Chuck, you are the craziest SOB I have ever met in my whole life. Now get on your knees." I know, right? That was what I told Greg. I said, "I don't do that crap. You got the wrong convict." And he said, no, dummy, we're going to pray. Well, let's revisit what I was thinking a minute ago. I wasn't going to pray. There wasn't no God. Jewel talked about it this morning. I thought me and him must have had the same parents, man, because I got drugged to the same church, told the same stuff, snuck out at night, seen the deacons sliding out of the bar, drunk as hell, with women on their arms that weren't their wives. I said, there ain't no God. Even the leaders of the church cheat on their wives. I wasn't going to pray to something like that. He had lost his mind. And he gave me a break. He said, do you believe that I believe? Like I said, we went to the same church, but he never lost his faith. And I said, yeah, you're crazy for that God guy. Every time they open up the doors, you're there, man. You're sweeping things out. You're fixing stuff and painting stuff and leading Sunday school. You're a nut for that God. He said, good. You'll borrow mine. So from now on, you'll start your prayers, Dear Greg's God. And that was the start that has led me to where I'm at today with God, which is, I don't know nothing about him. And yet, I know everything about him. See, I know I'm one of his kids. I know every man in here is one of God's kids. I don't care if you believe it or not. I believe it. You have trouble with God? Borrow mine. Dear Chuck's God. It'll get better. And I know I'm one of his kids. So, how am I going to tell him he did it wrong? I know he's got my best interests at heart. Always. Always and forever. How do I know that? Well, those girls taught me how to read. I had a friend who looked after me. He is a young person in AA. He was on Christmas break too. He's been going to college. And I said, man, Jeff, I wish I could be like you. You didn't go to college. And I need to back up a second. My mother moved back to Cincinnati right after I got sober. And Greg's wife got me a job, part-time job at Hardee's. I couldn't afford to live in the neighborhood where Greg did. My mother moved back to Cincinnati about that time. She could not afford, on the small pension she had, to live in a nice neighborhood like Greg lived in. But together, we could afford to live in that neighborhood. So we did. We became roommates. And allowed me to repair a relationship with my mother that I had torn apart. And my poor mother, she lived in a robe. She had to. And it was a floor-length robe that she took on her own and sewed pockets all the way down there. And if she had something of value, it went in the robe. Money went in the robe. Credit cards went in the robe. Coupons went in the robe. Jewelry went in the robe. Fake jewelry went in the robe. If my mom thought it was important, it was in the robe. And I started complaining to her one day about not even having a GED. I was so stupid. She said, oh, honey, you got a GED. I said, what? She said, oh, yeah, here. She went in the robe. There's where it was. GED had my name on it. Keen alcoholic mind that I have took me till I was 17 years sober to figure out what happened. When I went in the Army, my youngest brother was already well into his alcoholism, and he was only 13 years old. My brother's nickname, even at 13, was Cousin It, because that boy had to shave twice a day, even at 13, to look clean shaven. He had more hair on his back than I had on my face. Cro-Magnon. So I gave Johnny my draft card so he could drink. And while he was drinking on my draft card, he had the keen idea he'd go take a GED. I always thought my brother John was stupid. He got a really good score. But the only ID he had was a draft card that said Chuck Hartley. Didn't say John. So he gave it to my mom. My mom put it in the robe. And there you go. The easy way to education. So now I'm talking to Jeff. Jeff's going to college. He's only 20 years old, but he's 4 years sober. I said, Jeff, I wish I could be like you and go to college. He said, why don't you go to college? I said, you know how old I'll be in 4 years if I go to college? He said, no. How old are you going to be in 4 years if you don't go to college? And I shared my fifth step with Greg. We started talking about fears. And he said, what are you afraid of? And I said, nothing. He says, that's so. How come you carry them pistols in? I said, because that way I ain't scared of nothing. So there I am. They say, go downtown. There's an office called the Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation. And go down there and see if they got anything they can help you with about going back to school. So I went down there, and this little tiny lady invited me into her office to talk to her. And she said, you're going to have to take some tests. I said, okay. And I took the test and came back. She said, tests say you're going to make a good social worker. I said, that's so. I hate people. She said, I don't care. Tests say you're going to make a good social worker. I was fired up. I said, lady, I'm sitting here in your office with 2 pistols and a knife telling you I don't want to be no damn social worker. And bless her heart, man, she's about 5 foot nothing bowed up, man. And she said, get out of my office and quit wasting my time then. Shoot. I backed off. All right, let's go be a social worker. So off I go. I had no idea how to go to school. So the old timers took me aside and said, Chuck, you never went to school before. You have absolutely no idea what you're doing, so you're going to go to school on the AA plan. I said, what's that? He said, well, listen up. They're going to give you some classes to go to, and they're going to tell you what time to get there. Go 15 minutes early, sit in the front row. Oh, yeah, I know how to do that. While you're sitting there, a guy's going to come in, and he's going to take the podium, and he's going to talk for a while. Okay, I can relate to that. While he's talking, he's going to suggest you buy and read a book or two. I mean, doggone, you sound just like you guys. I can do that. That's how I went to school. I had no idea how to take notes or type papers or anything. My first paper was printed. I handed it in, and she handed it right back. She said, you're in college now, son. We want typewritten stuff. I didn't know nothing about typing. I didn't have a typewriter. I didn't know anything about it. So I found somebody that did. Turned out later to be my wife. She did not type my papers. She said, here's the keyboard. Type it up best you can. When you're done, I'll come clean it up and show you what I did. And that's what she did. I learned how to type because my wife refused to type my papers. So after 4 years, we're graduating. We're sitting around in school social work offices, and the dean of the school's going around. He's congratulating us. And it's all different ones, you know. Hey, Chip, you did a good job. I hear you got another job lined up. Good for you. You know, hey, Ron, you did awesome. I hear you got accepted into grad school. Good for you. That's awesome. Keep coming back. And he got to me, and he said, Chuck, we haven't had a student like you in a while. He said, please tell me you're going to go to grad school. said, "Nah, Dean, I'm not going to grad school." I got married during those 4 years, and Beth brought 2 small children into the marriage that she had not yet retained custody of. And one of our big deals with her mother, who had custody of her children, was we would increase our standard of living to their standard of living, so that we didn't have to drag them down to the shithole places where we lived when we first got married. We would move to the suburbs and in the nice neighborhoods with the great schools, because her children's lives had been a constant. Same schools, same friends, grandma doing all the work of 2 parents. So we did that. And I told the dean, I can't afford to go to grad school. I got these kids, I got this wife, we're going to make it. And he said, could you afford to go to school if I paid for it? Man, my drug of choice is free and more. And this cat was offering both. I said, let me talk to my wife. I didn't have to talk long. She said, oh yeah, get back over there and tell that man to start writing up that grant. So she did. And I did. And so I'm going to tell you guys, if you're sitting in here and you think you're too old to go back to school, I wasn't. Greg wasn't. If you think you're too dumb to go back to school, I didn't even have a GED. I had one thanks to my brother. But I went back to school with a sober mind, and I was able to learn. And what happened was, I went from illiterate to a master's degree in administrative social work in 10 years. So I'm here to tell you, you can do it. And how do I know I can do that stuff? Because God carries me. See, Greg told me something early in my sobriety that I carry with me to this day. He said, Chuck, if you give 100% of what you got to everything you do, even if that 100% you got is 10% of what's needed to complete the job, you say God will make up the rest every time. I said, really, let's put this to the test. And I did. And I did a little bit of AA, and my mother and I became friends again. And I did a little bit more of AA, and come to find out, I have a GED with a really good score. And I do a little bit more of AA, and I get a chance to go to college. God has made up the rest every single time. Every single time. And I had some profound things I want to lay on y'all before I was done. But I used to drink a lot, and I have a CRS disease. I can't remember stuff. CRS. But what I do know for sure is I'm one of God's kids. I'm a son of the King. I need to act like it. I'm a son of the King, and my brother is Jesus Christ. When my brother was walking the earth, they said, how you know? How you know the things that he's doing? They said, oh yeah. They said, the deaf can hear, the blind can see, and the lame pick up their beds. Thanks for my life.